Welcome to episode 12 of A New Way to Love, Live, and Lead. I'm your host, Cheryne Blom, a master coach, author, speaker, and the founder of the Self-Mastery Hub, your online platform for self-inquiry, healing, and growth. This podcast is here to remind you, midlife is not a crisis. It's a climax. Each week, we explore how to break old patterns, build authentic confidence, and live with intention so you can thrive in this powerful chapter of your life. I am super excited for today's episode because today is all about self-acceptance, radical self-acceptance. And I have a very special guest with me, Sheridan Stewart, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. But I really wanted to, before we begin, just really, this is so perfect because this first season of the podcast has all about introducing the concepts of what it means to, a new way to love, live, and lead in midlife, how we really come home to ourselves and step fully into our power. And last episode was on self-connection, and the episode before that was around authenticity. And so I thought, what a beautiful way to wrap up season 1 with this conversation with this amazing powerhouse. So let me tell you a little bit about Sheridan and introduce Sheridan. Sheridan Stewart is an author and radio broadcaster known for her insightful, inspiring, and relatable style. Plus, she brings the fun, which is why you are here. A popular former FM presenter on Triple M, a music journalist, a comedy producer, and speaker before joining the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in 2014. Sheridan can be heard on the ABC radio in Queensland, the lovely Sunshine Coast, when she's not swimming or writing. Well, you're going to have to tell us a little bit more about that. Sheridan's first nonfiction book, I Am Enough, a 90-day challenge to find contentment, was released in the UK, Oz, and New Zealand, and the USA in 2023. How exciting. And her fiction has been published in the Chicago Quarterly Review. Wow, such a vibrant career from broadcaster to writing and creating. So wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I probably just want to say we all look good on paper. So it's not just me. I think that's the beauty of a resume. And it's just something to reflect on because life is not, this wonderful upward trajectory. It's very much the roller coaster ride. And I've certainly been on that as well within my career. Things have mostly gone incredibly well. I've had lots of purple patches, but I've had those dark nights of the soul as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes us such rich humans, where we have the tapestry of all the different colors and all the different layers of living life fully. And, it's so beautiful when you kind of wrap it into a bio, because yes, we have the dark nights of the soul and we go through our ups and downs, but a bio celebrates the richness. It celebrates the rewards. It celebrates the lessons and the achievements. And so, own that. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know what I found? Just a little tip for anybody who's looking at developing their own website is when I finished doing that and working with a really good designer, I looked at it and went, oh my God, it's a living resume. I don't have to, feel like I'm selling myself because I have done all of those things. I do all of those things. So, a website is taking the bio or the CV to a whole new level. It was really fun.
Absolutely. And it's like packaging you. And I love that. And we'll definitely have your website in the show notes because I loved going onto your website, and it actually really does give you a snapshot of your personality. Like, I just found it fun. I found it interesting. Your writing pieces, I actually really enjoyed the experience of being on your website. So
Thank you.
That is awesome. Now, I know you said you've had your dark nights of the soul, and you share your burnout story as a catalyst for starting your work and starting your transformation, which is so interesting because, the theme of this podcast is about midlife is not a crisis. It's a moment of awakening. It's a moment of climax, actually. We're going to get into that a little bit. We all need a good climax every now
Sounds
and
like
then.
fun. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
But we go through that burnout first. I know that has been my experience. Managing my burnout continues to be my experience.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us about that chapter of your life and how it kind of inspired the next chapter? When was the moment you realized something had to change?
Okay. Well, there's probably been a couple of moments, but to give you just a quick snapshot, I probably hadn't and still to some degree struggle with sleep. And I hadn't slept well since spending time with my mother during her palliative phase, her cancer journey and her passing, her death. So that led me to the role that was just such a great reinvention of my career, which was coming to the ABC. My family were ABC watchers and listeners, and I've always held that organisation in such high regard. And coming there, I took it very, very seriously. So I suspect, and you might be able to reflect as well, that when we burn out, it's usually because we are very passionate about something. We burn out because our care factor is very high. We don't burn out because we're sitting around having a nice time. That might make us depressed if life is lovely, but a little bit perhaps without purpose or meaning. But burnout tends to visit us when we become very passionate about what we do. So as I came to the ABC, I was very conscientious of the importance of accuracy, the importance of news, yet I come from an entertainment background. So I was chosen initially to be part of that organisation. The feedback was, we want the freshness, we want the fun, we want the natural intelligence. It doesn't matter about not having the most academic background. But I was very conscious that when you're presenting some of the important, heavy breaking news, you need to be 100% accurate. So I was already a little bit on high alert to make sure I got things right. And often when you're presenting, you're in the hot seat. And when there's breaking news, you're quite dependent on your colleagues, on your co-workers, on your producers, bringing that to you in a way that you can very quickly digest, often on the fly, and present that. So here I was on the Sunshine Coast. Along came the very first bushfire of the summer. Well, it was actually winter here on the Sunshine Coast for that first bushfire that became known as Black Summer, that incredibly intense period where the world watched in horror. Places that never got any news out of Australia. It's like, oh my God, the fires, and the wildlife and the devastation and the lives at risk. And as the ABC, we are, of course, the national broadcaster for emergencies, the trusted place you go to. It began here on the Sunshine Coast, and then the fires continued, and they moved through places that I'd lived or worked or had close friends in, even had property in. And normally in a emergency broadcast, you're there for the emergency. Say it's a fire, it might take a day or two to go out. Everybody bands together. You're presenting the most recent, most accurate, up-to-date information. And then you go into the recovery period and the stories of the communities as they regroup, and we're there for that as well. With Black Summer, it was relentless. There was barely time to catch our breath because the fires just kept going. And it's a national organisation, so we're very, very conscious of that. Then the last fire went out, and I'm not 100% sure if it's somewhere between 7 and 10 days before it was declared that we were in a pandemic. So we went from one form of emergency broadcasting to another. And that sense of, I guess, vicarious trauma where we're all watching people being devastated, and a very different type of emergency broadcasting, from everyone being banded together on high alert to being the only person, myself and the presenter, the only people in the radio station holding space for everybody who are wondering what's going to happen next. Am I going to die? Is someone I love going to die during the beginning of COVID-19 when no one really knew what was going on? I'd speak to the greatest pandemics, the greatest epidemiologists, the greatest epidemiologists in the country. And they were like, hey, we're working this out and it's a changing thing and the government's trying to catch up, and everyone was doing the best they could. But then, of course, what emerged out of that were some very polarizing opinions throughout the community. So holding space for all of that whilst, seeing friends go down different rabbit holes, or consider that because I worked for a government department, I was somehow, part of some great conspiracy. There was a lot of challenges going on during this time. In the lead up to this, for the first time in my adult life, I'd held my weight in a healthy weight range. I'd always been, and I joke about it, I try not to do it so much anymore, but my line was always eye candy for the chubby chasers. I was cute, but I was like way, way overweight in an unhealthy weight category most of my adult life. I'm very self-conscious about it. It's probably why I went into radio. Although I would have to say it's a medium where the very first time I walked into a studio, I felt at home. I feel very comfortable in a radio studio. And, hopefully that will translate to podcasts. But yeah, it was a very challenging time. And some of my, long fought battles around food addiction, and managing weight and size and body image and all of that started to creep back in. And my husband, still married somehow after saying this, he comes out with, if you're worried about running out of money, because I was also I felt like I was leaking money. I'd had a small inheritance. I mentioned my mother's passing. I had a small inheritance and I felt like it was just disappearing. I didn't really know where it was going. And he suggested, if you want to see where your money's going and you're worried about your weight, maybe you should have a look at how much time you're spending in cafes and restaurants. And
Interesting.
I was so defensive, I could feel, my back was up. I was ready to fight. But I guess I've been involved in personal development, self-help, whatever you want to call it, for a very long time. And I knew that defensiveness came from a place of, there's some truth in here. It might not be the whole truth, but there's something here
Hit
for
a
me to
nerve.
look at. Oh, it sure did. And he suggested, hey, if you're worried about money, why don't you look at your spending over the last 3 months? Without judgment, without being self-critical, just look at the facts. Where has the money gone? And so I discovered that, yes, I was spending a lot on food. So no surprise that my weight was going in a direction that I didn't want it to go at the time. But I also saw some other things crop up. I was being overly generous, which sounds like such a nice thing. Every charity I stumbled across, every prompt I got to, contribute to some online thing, because we were all just living online at the time, I donated to. And every friend that I couldn't see, I was sending flowers to. And it is a lovely thing to do, but I was doing it from a place of reaction rather than really consciously thinking about it, and even asking myself, what was this inheritance for? My mother's desire would have been for it to make a significant and lasting improvement to my life, not for it to be frittled away on sort of trying to regulate my emotions during a difficult time. So that became something that I reflected on, looked at, and then I thought, well, I've just looked 3 months backwards. What if I look 3 months forward and set myself a challenge? Can I reverse that over a 90-day period? Essentially a season. So I love that it's a season. You can't change much in a day, but during a season, nature herself changes. So I've had to look at, how could I challenge myself? And what was really underneath it was that contemplation of, is it possible that I already have enough? Do I already do enough? Maybe I could feel like I am enough instead of feeling constantly driven to have, do, and be more.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. And, that mantra for daily life is so, so powerful. And I want to come back to that. But I want to just veer off a second
Mhm.
because what you're talking about is so interesting because I've worked with so many clients over the years, and even in my own personal journey, you can see a link between your net worth and your self-worth. And we're talking about self-acceptance and radical self-acceptance. What you're talking about and sharing so beautifully is, when we really reflect on our patterns, the patterns that we do to self-soothe, the patterns that
Mhm.
we do to feel safe, the patterns that we do to, mask whatever pain we're feeling. Um, how do you link that net worth and self-worth? What does that mean for you?
That's such a great question. I love the way you've phrased that. I would say to this day, I still have a self-consciousness about, um, not having the cash flow I'd like to have, and
Mm,
I have to work hard to let go of coming from a place of lack. That was my family background. There's a lot of people who have it much tougher than we had it, but nonetheless, there wasn't ever much to share around. And there's a flip side. There's a glass half full, glass half empty to that. The message that I always got was, we can't afford it. And so letting go
mm,
of that mantra, and my way of responding to it was to either be very restrictive financially or very spontaneous. So we saw that spontaneity in all the flower buying and the charities and the self-soothing of overeating. And it's not like I was harming anyone really other than myself. But I think I felt like I was, a crack addict. I felt very, very
mm,
possessed by my own demons
mm,
and out of control and very down on myself. I think women in particular, but it's no longer exclusive to women. It's men, it's people who
mm,
identify as non-binary. We are so judged by the filter that we want the world to see us through. And, for a lot of women, body image has been, at the heart of that. So it's such a challenging one. And the way I felt
mm,
about that addiction was as bad as if I was an extreme alcoholic, or as if I
mm.
was, and yet, it's a very human thing to do, to self-soothe. It's gotten
Absolutely.
sneakier, I would say. These things get sneakier. So I
Mhm,
may have stopped overeating, but next thing you know, binge watching episodes. There's a lot of evidence that a single or perhaps two episodes of something that's fun and uplifting is quite good for us psychologically. But when we spend our whole weekend, when we're so, burnt out by life, or so exhausted, or so
mm,
uninspired, it can go either way. It can be exhaustion or living an uninspired life. We can binge on all sorts of self-soothing
yeah,
behaviors instead of a little self-reflection and taking some joyful, positive action. So yeah, that's been a big
absolutely.
takeout for
Yeah.
me. Did I even answer the question, or did I
Yes,
go
look,
off
I
on a
think you did, and
random trajectory?
I wanna unpack it a little.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, no, it's fantastic, fantastic, and I love everything that you're saying because I think what you're like what you were just saying there is, that we all know, we know it deep down inside when we are attending to our needs and when we are avoiding
Yes.
the deeper stuff. And so I think it's so important, the awareness is the first step. Awareness is so key. And, even myself, like I've had my own journey with emotional eating, and I really related to your, like what I call in me, my feast and famine.
Mm,
Um, and I've mapped that similar to you. I've mapped that to my spending, and I can see the feast and famine, the scarcity of like, oh, I need to, hold on to what I have, or then I just need to splurge, and how it showed up in spending as well as eating. It's very interesting, and it's so interesting how these manifest. So, when you say I have enough, I do enough, I am enough, it's such a simple yet so transformative because, from an ego perspective, the ego says I'm not enough.
or have
And
more, do more.
yeah, and to the ego it's insatiable. We're never going to be enough. We're never going to measure up to that. Um, what does that living by that mantra look like in daily life? And
Mm.
you've answered that a lot already, a lot, but more specifically, like, what does that mantra look like in everyday life for you?
For me, it means staying conscious and noticing if my adrenals are up. Is it excitement or is it anxiety? You know,
Mm,
unless I'm about to bungee jump, which I never do, unless I'm about to do something really joyful, chances are it's just a little hint, and it will come when I overwork, when I think just one more. I just want to write one more chapter. I'll just do one more edit on this piece of radio. I'll just make one more call. When I'm over, when the tank is empty, it's empty. So then you're dipping into resources that should only be pulled on for emergencies. So I think for me, the message has been sort of operate on 70 to 80%, because this whole, I gave 100%, and the stupidity of give 110, give 150, 200. There is no such thing as
yeah.
150% of 100%. 100 is 100. And there are times where we have to rise to the occasion, but most of the time we want to keep a little bit in the tank. So
Mm,
a lot of it is about noticing, and
mm,
I'm a tracker. So I'm a very eudaimonic person. I love to tick the boxes and achieve the thing. And so when I wrote I Am Enough, it was a 90-day challenge where I challenged myself to, no non-essential spending and to just lean into what I had. So I just notice now, it's like, is that arcing up again? So the cycles have softened. They still happen. There's still
mm,
moments where I'll go, am I heading to the fridge because I'm actually hungry and it's time to eat? Or am I a little bored? Am I self-soothing? And I've seen
mm,
it manifest in people in so many different ways. It's not always the obvious. It can
mm,
be a little bit too much time on the computer, playing games, which are fun. Again, a little bit like watching an uplifting film. A little bit of that in our lives is a relief, is a break.
yeah,
Scrolling social media, and, it's such a trap. You pop on to say hello to a friend or send a message, and next thing you know, a whole chunk of time is gone and you're down some, weird ass rabbit hole about something that you're not interested, and you're being bombarded with ads, certainly by the time you reach midlife, for thousands of ways not to have saggy skin,
yeah,
and outrageously illustrated with people who are so filtered. And have you noticed they've even started using cartoons? They morph from a mature looking woman into a, animated cartoon. And I'm like, who's falling for this? Yet we must be, because they're the ones making money out of us. And the other thing I'd say, you mentioned, midlife being such a rich time. I'm not using your words, but this time for
yeah,
reinvention. And I love getting older. Like, not all the time. I'm like anyone, I'm going to be critical at times, looking in the mirror first thing in the morning, especially when I
yeah,
haven't had enough sleep. But I love the richness of knowing that I no longer have the time to waste. I may feel some of those insecurities that I felt in my youth, but I don't have the time to give in to them. I just
yeah,
need to get on and live a meaningful life while I can. And I think there's something about the innocence of youth where we think we've got all this time, so we're striving for perfection. I couldn't possibly, I would have turned you down, my dear, because would have been younger going, I'm too fat to be on camera. Something as silly as that. I didn't swim in the
mm,
ocean for years because I felt
mm,
self-conscious. Seriously,
mm,
nobody's looking at me. Everybody's focused on themselves. And,
yeah,
now when I do notice someone else who's of size, or perhaps is living with a different ability or a different body type, I just celebrate that. And it
yeah,
reminds me that we all deserve to swim in the ocean, or whatever your equivalent of joy is.
yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I think, there's the beautiful story of self-acceptance, especially at this age, is like you said, we do start to feel a bit more immortal. Um, and it for me, and what I hear a lot in my clients and in the listener stories is we've out it's like we've outgrown our patterns, and we're too tired to do the pattern anymore. Like, it literally is enough. Like, I love that word enough. For me, that's the power word. When a client
Yeah.
comes to me and says, I've had enough, I'm ready. I'm like, woohoo, let's
Yes.
begin, because
Because
you've just started a new chapter. So it's so powerful, that, and, for listeners, if they're struggling with their not enoughness, where's a great place for them to start?
I think it's important to start where you are and just have a look at, um, if I take that away, how do I feel? Like when I did my restrictions with the 90-day challenge, it wasn't about I was never going to have a coffee out. That was my first thing. It was like, I'm going to stop eating in cafes and restaurants for 90 days. Now, it doesn't mean I haven't gone back and done that from time to time. I have noticed, though, that I do it much less. And by restricting some of those behaviors, there were two around spending and one around overworking. In that space, I began to notice how I felt and I began to contemplate. So when we give ourselves space, if you're an overdoer
Mm,
or you're a
mm,
number-outerer or a combination of both, so if you're numbing out, having some quiet time to notice
mm,
what's really going on, I think
mm,
that's where we can lean into maybe I have enough, maybe I do enough. When
mm,
we suspend the habits or the behaviors that are, either perpetuating how we feel. They feel self-soothing, but they're keeping us stuck. And I think sometimes we need to let go and listen. And what I discovered was all these memories started to bubble up from under the surface. And I'm sure you've seen this
yeah,
with your clients and
yeah,
in consultation, is that when we do have some quiet time, our creativity can flourish. Creativity cannot flourish when we're bombarded. It might still stick its head up if it's one of your strong, things in life, and mine is. However, in that quietness, in the stillness, and in the nothingness, in being perhaps even a little bored, up came some memories of when was the last time I was truly content. And I tell a
mm,
story in the book, and it came up for me again the other day, just thinking about it, of when I was a child visiting some horses. So we didn't have enough money to have our own horses, and I was a horse mad child. I was born knowing that I could ride, that I should ride. I was just felt like I had that connection that's a percentage of girls just feel it, this connection to nature and to horses. And there were some horses that were a hefty walk away, and I'd take myself off there and see the horses. And one morning, I remembered this when I was writing. When was the last time I was truly content? And I remember leaning over a fence, and a foal had been born literally minutes before I arrived. And the mother was still licking the placenta off its little body. Now, I didn't own that horse. I don't even know who owns that horse. I didn't get to ride those horses. All I did was witness this moment in wonder. And I was there for quite a while. Foals, as we know, they're up on their feet quite quickly, and it
mm,
staggered past its mother. And I was the first human being it ever laid eyes on. And I remember being 100% content. It had nothing to do with what I was having for lunch, what I was wearing. It had nothing to do with anything other than being in the moment. So if we
yeah,
block ourselves from that, if we're doing so many self-soothing behaviors and activities just to feel like we're staying afloat, and I understand them, and it's not that I don't slip into them from time to time, but I now notice, that's enough of that, Sheridan. What am I avoiding? What am I
yeah.
feeling? Perhaps there's some bigger issues at stake, or perhaps I just need to rest.
Mm, I love that. The power of self inquiry and, going into this with curiosity rather than judgment is, the more we question, it's such a powerful tool, and to dig in and seek to understand rather than judge. It's such a powerful space. So creating that reflection,
Yes.
really, really key, you'd say.
Yeah, reflection time. And then those patterns, as we let them go, when they crop back up again, I just go, oh, there it is. But treat it more like an echo. It's not something that I have to feel, the deep pull of anymore. I can let it go.
Mm,
And that's just an echo of the past. Those neural pathways are well worn, so they don't go away instantly, thus the 90 days as opposed to, a 7-day challenge or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
However, I think any time, even a single event of taking a little bit of time, I'm a mad journaler. I love journaling. I set myself up with a gratitude practice. Like I try and start my day in that
mm,
space of reflection. What am I grateful
yeah,
for? And then wrap it up with, and what am I looking forward to? And if I'm overtired or overworked or over anything, that's a real challenge because sometimes what I'm looking forward to is going back to bed at the end of the day. And that's just the honesty. Like life does go in cycles and none of us are bouncing out of bed with unicorns, blowing trumpets and rainbows every single day, but I still can
mm,
make the best of that day, even on a challenging day.
and it's so real, there's no, massive expectations in that. It's really accepting ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah? How do you define self-acceptance?
Mm. Anytime you can feel comfortable in your own skin without perfectionism or comparison weighing in. So I think those two are the two that pull us away from self-acceptance. The need to be perfect, to do something perfectly, to have some perfect, idyllic, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
then the big one, particularly for women, comparison, comparison, comparison. And
Mm,
we've been
mhm,
sold a bill of goods when it comes to this. We are constantly
mhm.
marketed to, there is so much good in social media. You and I may not have met if it hadn't have been for social media connecting us,
Yeah. Yeah.
via a friend and so on and so forth. It's given us this beautiful ability to connect globally, but
Mm,
it comes at a cost. And the
mm.
cost is they, whoever they are, the advertisers, are looking for a weakness. They're looking to
Yep.
capitalize on our insecurities. So I could have through the power of comparison and perfectionism, I've reached midlife and, I'm very aware that I could move from I'm too fat, which I'm not anymore, happy to say. I'm not
Mm.
perfect. I'm, still a work in progress, but I'm not too fat anymore, but I could go straight from that to now I'm too old.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
we can, if we're constantly comparing ourselves to
Mm,
anyone or any algorithm, anyone else's incredibly unique life, we're actually stepping away from that self-acceptance that goes, I've got this one precious life. So even if you believe in reincarnation, that's fine. But you as you, me as me, this life in this
mm.
moment, it's never coming back. So we've got to make the most of it and celebrate and
Yeah.
look for the joy, look for the self-acceptance, and look
Mm,
for how can I contribute in a way that is
mm.
meaningful. And that's different for absolutely everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think when we're in that not enoughness, like what I hear you say and really relate in my messaging is around being disconnected, right? When we're disconnected and we're in that search to prove our worth rather than being our worth, like just because we're looking for it and gathering evidence, it's insatiable. There's never enough. Like you
Hmm.
said, it's, we're comparing ourselves. We've got these expectations on ourselves, which we can never, it's just this bottomless pit, and you can understand why that, comparison is the thief of joy,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is what you've come back to. We're going to get to that. I want to just ask you, in your book, you talked about surrender, choice, and change.
Mm.
Um, and so many people struggle with that word surrender because they think it's a
Yes.
passive state.
Well,
Oh, I can't surrender. Take us through that because it's
people
such a
yeah, you're right. That people mistake surrender for giving up. It's like if I stop, I've given up. I've given up on myself. I'm letting everybody down. Surrender simply means letting go. And this was like a dictionary definition I looked up. It means letting go of something lower for the sake of something higher. And I
Oh,
love that. It's just
oh, say that
beautiful.
again. Say that again.
So surrender is letting go of something lower to make space or for the sake of something higher.
Oh, I've
So
never heard that before. I love that.
if you're looking at it in terms of your own behavior and actions and seeking change, then suddenly letting go of something, surrendering, and it's also an acceptance of what is. I was putting on weight. I was spending too much. I was overworking. I was being overly generous beyond my capacity. So by all means, be generous within your capacity, but when you're harming yourself by giving to others, whether it's a workplace, whether it's, you know, a charity or whatever, if you're not really in a position, if the tanks are dry and you haven't got that backup there, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. So it made it so much
Mm,
easier when I really reflected on surrender and letting go and on what if I actually just lean into what I already have just for 90 days. It's about pressing pause. It's not some dreadful dogma that I'm going to live by, but for
mm,
90 days. And, the one I do semi-regularly, at least once a year, is the no non-essential spending, because those habits, they creep. They really do.
mm,
But I discovered, that I had an abundance of things, but also of opportunities, because what went missing in the overdoing and the overspending was my creativity to a degree. Like, yes, it was being used at work and yes, it's used in my writing, but my art practice had all but vanished. And I'd stopped listening to
mm,
music for the sake of music. I'd lost a lot of those joyful things that are readily available to me that I had all around me, but I wasn't utilizing. And so along with that came this lovely noticing. It's like, oh, this ornament that I haven't even looked at for years. I walk past it every day. I could dust it off. I could put it in a new place. And so, largely joy had gone missing. So
mm,
pressing pause on being overly invested in having, doing, and being something other than in the moment taught me so much. It's such a healthy
mm.
thing to do. And I think we need to do it regularly, in big and small ways. We can't all go off on a retreat all of the time, but, if
Yep.
you can, if that's what you're drawn to do, that is one way of doing it. But just taking some time to pause between one activity and the next. I became
Mm,
something I really appreciate is my drive between one thing and the next, because it gives me, on the Sunshine Coast, everything seems to be about 20 to 25 minutes away. So it gives me that little bit of time that, yes, I could listen to a podcast or some music if they're joyous
mm,
things, but sometimes just the silence and
mm.
challenging myself to notice. And a
Yep.
road I drive down every day has things on it that I've never seen before, or the season has changed and something's a little bit different. So that pressing pause allows things to emerge from within, but also allows us to see what we already have, what's all around us that we're not even
Yeah.
utilizing.
Yeah. I love it. And, rather in the, I spoke a few episodes ago about the gotta mind. I gotta do this. I gotta, like, in our doing mode, we forget about our being mode, and, just being able to be present and, rather than in that analytical mind, we're in that state of wonder. It's like that childish wonder and awe and gratitude and playing with life rather than
Yes.
doing and taking it so seriously. So the joy returns.
Absolutely. And in midlife, cut yourself a break. If you are, caught up in, something that you don't like in your face that is changing because you're older, and just stop looking in the mirror so much. We don't have to
Yeah.
spend all day. Like, get yourself sorted and then get on with your day and get on with living, an authentic life in a meaningful
Mm,
way, rather
mm.
than criticizing yourself. Just give yourself a break.
I love that. I love it. It's so gentle. It's so nurturing. It's so supportive. It's so funny because I mean we met through Mary Martin, who was on the
Oh,
show a few
she's a
episodes
gem.
ago about.
Hmm.
We were talking about balancing hormones, and like ever since then, I'm like, what is this doing? What is this? What is this thought doing to your estrogen? You know, is this going to affect the seesaw? Is this creating cortisol? Like, I've lit. Is it worth the chemistry to go through this right now? And then it's like, no, my keeping my chemistry balanced is the goal.
That's right. So that noticing, it's like, oh, I don't feel quite right.
Yeah.
Pause, reflect. What do I need to adapt? Do I just
Mm,
simply need a break? Do I
mm,
need another glass of wine? Probably not. That's going to mess with my sleep. Doesn't mean I never have a
mm,
glass of wine. So it's that, walking that line and letting it ebb and flow. And it's meant to be different. Like the ocean is different every day you go to the beach. Even if you go to the exact same spot, it has changed. The shape of the sand, the size of the waves, the
mm.
color and the clarity of the water. It's an ever changing thing. We can't be in a space of, happy, happy, fake, fake, fake all the time. We can be in a
Exactly.
space of contentment a lot of the
Mm,
time when we let
mm,
ourselves, when we let go,
mm,
when we press pause, give ourselves a space to really notice, then all of these things come to be. And I think there's been a real sort of what's the word when something takes something over? A misinterpretation of thought creates reality. Our thoughts do
mhm,
create reality. It's been
mm,
hijacked by so I think I'm going to be a millionaire and I'll instantly become a millionaire or a billionaire. There's probably need to be a billionaire these days to cut it.
mm,
Um, but our thoughts create our reality in that really deep, you know, cellular
mm.
way, and our
Yeah.
actions is where we take our thoughts and can create a different reality for ourselves. So
Mhm.
thinking ourselves into anything is will only take us so far. It's like that first step. It's like, oh, I've had that thought, now what's the action I need to take to create the result I want? I
I
mean,
love that.
yeah.
So talk us through, connect the dots with the choice and change, because there was the
Yes. The
surrender,
surrender.
choice, change. Was that right?
Yeah. So once we surrender and
So
accept.
choice and change. Yeah.
Yeah, once we surrender and accept what is, we now have a choice as to what we want to do about it.
Yeah.
So if we're resisting something, say I'm pretending, I get up and all my mirrors only come to here, so I don't notice that I was carrying weight. I don't want to know about it. I start
Mm,
wearing stretchy clothes and I don't notice that my body is changing in a way that is displeasing, not just from a fashion conscious level, but in a health sense. What is my body
mm,
trying to tell me if I don't notice? And I can't change what I don't accept. So that's where the surrender is, that self-acceptance. This
mm,
is where I am right now.
mm,
And I just use weight because it's a lived experience, and B, it's, just such a common understandable one. You can transfer the analogy to anything you like or any metaphor you want to. But yeah, first comes surrender. This is the current reality.
mm.
Then choice. What are my choices? Even when they're limited, there will still be some choice in there. My choice of
Yeah.
how I respond, my choice of how I decide to frame that. Do I need to reframe the way I feel about myself? Do I need to reframe the way I feel about the age I've arrived at? Do I need to reframe how I spend and what I get joy from? And there, from that choice, we can actually take the action that create change.
I love that. I love that. Such a beautiful model and clear steps to follow, and again just to kind of return back to ourselves and come back to and give us some guided self-inquiry. That's really beautiful. Um One of the topics that comes up often is around people pleasing.
Ah, yes.
I've really come to see that like we all have like what I call our people pleaser persona, and there's distinct ones, but we all have levels of it because of conditioning. But, to the ones that are the overgivers,
Mhm.
the perfectionists, the fixers
My
that
people, my
conti-
people. They are my people. I am one of you. I have been one of you. Yes.
Yeah, same. I think my aha moment was realize that I've spent most of my life being other people focused.
Yeah.
Um, so, what's your message around that?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research about joy and happiness. This sounds like I'm going sideways. I am ever so briefly. And there is so much evidence. There was a study, it was a 3-generational study on cardiovascular disease. And what they discovered is that people who didn't have enough connection, enough friends, enough joy in their life were more likely to develop a heart issue. And conversely, there appears to be a fair bit of evidence, and this was done over, as I said, 3 generations. So it's a longitudinal study that that happiness not only was a preventative for some health conditions, it was a heart study, but that joy and happiness are literally contagious. So if
Mhm.
you want to really please the people, okay, so here am I, Sheridan the people pleaser, and I'm thinking, oh, my husband needs this and my dog needs that and, my job needs this and the world needs that and I've got to do all of this. And if I'm not doing that, jumping to, I'm assuming are other people's tune because we often, make up a narrative for our people pleaser to get busy with, then I'm not making other people happy. No, no, no. Get
Mm.
this. The
Mm.
study showed that not only did being joyful, being happy, um, impact your friend, it impacted your friend's friend and your friend's friend's friend. So joy
Wow.
is literally contagious. Yeah. And we know
Wow.
that, like when you
Yeah.
smile, I feel so good because you've got this beautiful smile and it's coming to me through the camera. And
Mm.
when I smile, we can't not feel a bit better unless we're super
Yeah.
faking it. But as long as
Yeah.
there's some little genuine moment within that smile, you will
Yeah.
trigger those endorphins or dopamine or whatever
Mm.
you're triggering in our neural
Yeah.
pathways that say, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you
And
can please
mm.
people doing that rather than doing their bidding, rather than turning yourself into a pretzel, especially if they haven't asked you, if you're the sort of people pleaser that you're imagining what other people need, look, you might be situationally psychic, but chances are you're going to get a bit off track with it. And, as we mature, one of the beautiful things is recognizing that we get it wrong sometimes. I actually now check with my beloved because I had all these assumptions. First, I assumed we'd think alike because we loved each other. Well, I was very, very wrong. Um, we don't. We're not sharing a brain. We're sharing some chemistry and a
Yeah.
life and all sorts of other things. So I've learnt to ask, especially when my
Mm.
interpretation triggers my people pleaser that thinks he's saying I have to do something differently. I actually now just do a check-in. Are you saying you want me to do this that way? And he's usually like, oh God, no, that's not what I meant at all.
Mm.
So
Mm.
ask before you feel the need to give in to your people pleaser, actually check, is that pleasing that person? And also, as you know, we can't please everybody all of the time. It's just not even possible. It's not necessary. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure nobody's done a deep dive into what is my purpose in life and discovered it was to be a people pleaser.
Well, we all want peace, but we don't
That's
necessarily need
right.
to be the peacekeeper.
Yeah.
There's so much in what you said that I want to unpack. Just there was something you said before in when we can only see things based on where we're at, right? So like my people pleaser, I link with my drama queen. And so what I've learned to do is understand that my people pleasing pattern is my way of being safe.
Yeah.
That my way of controlling my environment when it feels unsafe or uncertain is to overgive, is to make peace, is to make everybody nice because it's actually making me feel safe. And it was a really interesting realization of that I'm doing this to keep myself safe. I'm not actually being myself, which is why I would burn out and exhaust myself because I'm not being authentic. I'm actually doing all of this. And I loved what you said around the clarification because, when we have like the insecurities for whatever reason deep within us, and we all have them being human beings, it's the insecurities sometimes that we're looking through that lens. And so when a person's doing something and we're seeing it through the lens of that fear, we make a story. Like you said, our
Yeah.
thoughts become our reality. So we're creating this story that kicks in this pattern. And so many times it's incorrect. And like you said, in midlife, we've got enough evidence to see that, we can start seeing things as they are. And it really links to what you were saying about the power of the pause and being able to be so connected and attuned to hear what you're thinking, recognize it, surrender, change, choice. It's a really beautiful model. So thank you for that. And I think it's in regards to accepting ourselves. I loved what you were saying as well about the presence, like that, how we make people feel, because so many times we get stuck in who we feel we need to be and the whole how do we look and appearance. And, our presence holds so much power. And that's, I took that from what you were saying there of to remember, to accept ourselves because we don't really feel our presence. So we judge ourselves, but we don't really. So starting to notice how people are responding to you it's a really beautiful mirror and reflection.
Yeah, and it's this lovely reframe on being a people pleaser. How
Yeah.
can I make other people happy? If I'm happy, it's contagious. Joy is
Yeah.
literally contagious.
Yeah.
So what can I do to, just increase joy a little
Yeah.
today? What can I do in my life right now that makes
Mm.
me a little more joyful? It makes me good to be around and to
Mm.
know that that's having an impact on the world around me is
Yeah.
it's not selfish. We get to
Yeah.
step away from some of those old stories that either we've been told, and usually by this point in life, the person who told us that is either long gone or we've long since taken over the story and we start telling it to ourselves. So let it go. Let it go.
Absolutely.
And in that pause, we can just check, is it true? Do I know this for a fact? And if there's that strong voice that says, yes, it's true, it's always been true, it's like, yeah, but is it really true? Is it
Yeah.
100% true? Could I
Yeah.
perhaps look at things a little bit differently? Am I really that bad a person because I, chose not to do that thing that I thought my friend wanted, that I
Mm.
couldn't
Mm.
do? I
Mm.
ran out of time, or the only way to do that would be to burn out. Does my friend want me to be burnt out? If the answer is yes, possibly need to reconsider how much energy you're putting into that particular friendship. Maybe relax that friendship a little bit, step back.
Mm.
But look,
Mm.
the answer is nearly always no, isn't it? Our friends want us to be well the way we want them to be well. They want us to be happy the way we want them to be happy. And when we are happy, it's contagious. So that's a,
Yeah. I love it.
yeah.
I love it.
Oh, thank you for giving me the
My
chance
coaching
to
business is
reframe
called
people pleasing.
Contagious. Yeah. Well, my coaching business started with the name of Contagious Enthusiasm. So I really get that story, and it's so true. And I think what you're saying there is, like, it's one thing to be people pleaser, but it really comes to intention, right? So if your intention is to be safe and to control the situation or to avoid yourself and focus on others, then it's people pleasing. But if your intention is to bring joy, then your intention is to serve,
Mm,
right? So it's like what I took from what you were saying is like you can be selfish or you can be of service.
yes. And being joyful is being of service. It really is.
It's the best. Like you said, it's the best gift that we can give the world, and we need more of it. I love it.
Yes.
How can people? I get this question often. Because people will come and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm feeling so off, and I just, I'm feeling restless," and I'll be like, "Ooh, that's exciting."
Yes.
They look at me like I'm crazy, and they look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like, "Ooh, it looks like you're at the the precipice of some kind of awakening or breakthrough." How can you help listeners feel their kind of coming to their enoughness? Like, how can you help them discover that, and what are some of the signs that they can look for
Yeah. Look,
and
I
recognize?
I identify as somebody who is aware that transitions can be hard. So that restlessness is often you're about to outgrow something, like a snake shedding its skin, like it's getting too small, life's getting too tight, you're getting a little
Mm,
bit itchy. What can I let go of? What is hanging around that is slowing me down? And how can I create space for myself to see what's next? And actually, this is something that I just wanted to reflect on as well, to let it emerge. Like I'm a very driven person. So
yeah.
I've always been chasing the dream and setting the goal of being the first person to do this, or, you know, um, have some sort of massive success, whatever that means. And
Mhm.
it's an eternal goal, because as soon as you hit one level of success, you're instantly inspired to chase the next. And that's part of our culture. That's what we live in. I remember being in the sales manager's office. This was 20 years ago. Back in my FM radio days. And we were just having a chat at the end of the week, and a colleague walked in from the sales department and said, "Oh, I've just made this, $1 million sale," or whatever it was, for sake of the story. And the manager said to her, "Congratulations, that is fantastic." Now, without even taking a breath, said, "Now we need to focus on next week when you're back, the next." And it was like, I just remember standing there going, this person barely got to celebrate. They barely got a pat on the back,
Mm,
this little mandatory moment. Like, celebrate every little win is a way of starting to, rebuild, especially in one of those difficult transition times. And look, part of my life is in that right as we speak. So, I'm
mm,
really called upon, writing a book like this, you're really called upon to practice what you preach. And, I
yeah.
come back to some of those really basic things of like, what's really going on? What's out of my
Mm,
control? Oh, I'm waiting for a decision to be handed down from this person or this organization. How do I make the most of the meantime? That period where
mm,
everything hasn't lined up yet. The next step has yet to emerge. So how do I
yeah,
make the most of it? And usually, I would say, look to your own health and well-being. When
yeah,
you're unable to move forward, or you're feeling restless and you're not quite sure which direction. I think it was the Buddha that said, when you get to a crossroad and you don't know which direction to go, sit down.
yeah.
Just sit and
Beautiful.
wait, let it emerge. And the other
Mm,
the other thing I'd suggest is to move the energy. Like, for a long time, I was a very sedentary person. I was very self-conscious in my own body. And now I'm like, I got to dance it off. I've got to dance it off. It was actually
yeah,
Mary Martin, your guest from 2 episodes ago. Um,
yeah.
a year and a half ago, she gifted me a no lights, no lycra session. So you literally dance in the dark for an hour. It was so much fun that I've been doing it every week ever since. It's
I wanna come to the
so
Sunshine
joyful.
Coast to visit
Yes,
you
yeah.
and just do that. I
There's
wanna give that a go. That sounds
You would love
amazing.
it. And look, there's chapters all over the country. So just
Yeah,
type in to your search engine, No Lights, No Lycra, see if there's one near you. It's the,
I
the
love it.
massive sum of $10. You can barely get a coffee for $10 these days. And it was the best gift. It was right up there with gifts that might have cost thousands, because it brought a joy back, dancing there in the dark, feeling unself-conscious. I wasn't particularly fit at the time. I didn't have to think about how dorky I looked, or how unco I
Yeah,
was, or what I was
yeah, yeah,
wearing.
yeah.
It was so much fun. And from there, I started to find some online dance programs, and I dance almost every day. And
I love
so
it.
moving the energy, when we're
Yeah,
stuck and we're not ready to psychologically move, maybe
yeah, yeah,
move
yeah.
the energy, and at least you'll get a little bit of an endorphin hit. Go for a swim, dance. Dance is great because it's got music involved as well, so you get
Mm,
extra
mm, mm.
dopamines. And if you play music that has a nostalgia uh, associated with it. So I
Yeah.
remember my mother, who didn't have a high set point for happiness. She was a slightly melancholic, very brilliant woman, but happiness didn't come easily to her. But I remember her dancing around the lounge room to Hot August Night, Neil Diamond, and Crunchy Granola Sweet. So if I need to shake it off, whack that song on, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Wow.
good Lord, do 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 do. So
Um,
movement and
yeah.
nature offers us so
Mhm.
much. So we can shift from that space of restlessness to using
Mm,
that tetchy energy, and then just
mm,
watch what's emerging, what's beckoning me. We've got to quieten the
yeah.
old stories in order to allow the new ones to call us.
Mm, mm. So I love that. And, I think that, what you're speaking about there is the power of the body and how the body's always talking to us and always giving us signals of what it's needing. And so when you're really connected and tuning in, you're listening and turning that stuckness into dance. How beautiful. What a beautiful story. And I'm sitting, my word for the while has been becoming. Like I've loved
Mm,
the word becoming, but I'm listening to you say the word emerge, emerging. I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to have that word now for a while because I'm loving the movement and the energy of emerging. It's so
mm.
exciting,
Yes.
actually.
Yes.
I
Well,
love that.
it implies growth, and a word you used and you were using in your business, enthusiasm, which means
Yeah.
to be filled with God. What a fantastic word. Like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not religious, but anything,
Yeah.
it's like, I want to bring joy to the world. There's an earworm for
Yeah.
you. But to turn up with enthusiasm. So if
Yeah.
I'm doing something I love, the tiredness and the stuckedness and the frustration and all of that starts to drop away if I approach whatever it is, whether it's dance or a swim or this beautiful conversation with you today, approaching
Yeah.
it with enthusiasm, going, oh my goodness, this could be the best conversation I've had all day, all week, all year. Well, it's right up there. It's been absolutely delightful. So,
Oh, it's been amazing.
arriving
It's
with
been amazing. I
enthusiasm.
am I'm so excited. Thank you for Mary and thank you for the universe for connecting and I want to have you back because there's so much that you spoke about. I spoke with Mary about doing an episode entirely on sleep.
Yes,
And so
please.
I think we're going to bring you into that conversation. Now, I'm going to read the next question and, my midlife denial, I forgot to bring my reading glasses
Ah,
into a podcast where I'm needing to read. That's like, what?
I
Just
am the queen
bring your
of
reading glasses
denial.
every
Queen of denial when it comes to vision. The good news is I'm not sure of your age, but I'm a late bloomer because apparently the average person needs reading glasses, even if they've never had glasses for anything else. The average age that people start using reading glasses is 43. So I've overshot that mark. I am an overachiever,
Oh, wow.
and I still forget that, when I'm tired, when the light's a bit dim, when the writing's really small, yeah, I could do with a pair of reading glasses.
Well, I think because I've always I've worn glasses since I was 9. So now I'm like, I've got contacts, but like now I just can't read. And I'm like, I'm in that stage of going, no, I'm not adding anything else to this. But I definitely do. So I'm going to read this question because it's a little bit of a personal reflection that
Mhm.
I like to include to wrap us up. So, as I shared with you, the message of this podcast is, if midlife isn't a crisis, it's a climax. Um, what truth do you wish every woman could wake up to?
Um, you are enough and you do have a choice. You actually have choice over how today goes. To some degree, you might not have 100% choice, but there always, 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 always is choice. Uh,
Mm,
the friend I dedicated I Am Enough to was dealing with 2 terminal illnesses. and she chose to constantly bring enthusiasm. I'm not saying there weren't days where she just went to ground, but
Mm.
when it came to connecting with other people, you're talking to somebody who's just going through the most horrendous treatments, in a bid to save her own life. So it's a very brave thing to do.
Mm.
She had terminal cancer and then, insult to injury, was diagnosed with motor neurone disease.
Mm.
And
Wow.
she'd ring and say, "So how are you?" And I'm like, "How am I? I've got nothing to say. How are you?" And she's like, "Well, it was a rough week, but I'm feeling better today and all the better for speaking
Wow.
to you." And we'd laugh and connect. And I'm not saying we all have Mel's amazing capacity for positivity. I think I mentioned earlier, and you'd be well aware in your work, we all do have different set points for joy. I'm very good at bringing the joy in my presentations.
Mm.
I've had to learn to bring it to
Mm.
myself, because as a
Mm.
radio
Mm.
presenter, I'm not going to get on the air and go, "Oh, g'day, it's Sheridan. I feel like hell today and I haven't had enough sleep."
Mm.
And I mean, nobody wants to hear that, but
Mm.
to give that back to myself and go, well, how can I give myself some of the enthusiasm, some of the joy, some of the energy that others do? And
Mm.
Mel was the queen at that. We talk about the whole cup half full person. There would be a molecule of water somewhere in an empty glass. Mel had the ability to find it. So I think we
Oh,
all need to
yeah.
be a little more like Mel. We might not be able to ever, face our death and pain and everything she
Mm.
went through with the grace that she did. I don't know if I could be that gracious. I don't know if someone came to visit me and I wasn't in the mood, if I'd be as nice as she was about it. But
Mm.
I do think of her constantly when I'm feeling a little challenged, and it's like, well, if Mel could get through that, perhaps I could find that little moment of choice. The
Mm.
surrender.
Mm.
Yep, I'm not feeling great today. I'm overly tired. Okay, that's the reality. What choices do I have? And then what action can I take to begin to bring about a change? And some days the changes are small, but that's
Yep.
often enough. Like sometimes just that little, oh, I feel 10% happier. I might not have been able to, fill the tank quickly enough to get to 100%, but being 10% a little more elevated and more able to then make the next choice. So when we give
Yep.
ourselves that chance to really surrender, we give ourselves more choices and more
I love it.
options.
I love it. That's a real truth bomb. Real beautiful, beautiful truth bomb. Um, okay. Last question. Midlife is often about coming home to yourself. What does living true to yourself look like for you right now?
Ooh. That's a big question because I'm actually sort of in the middle of some significant potential changes and choices. So they
Mm.
haven't all emerged. I haven't got the full picture yet. So coming home to myself, right now, it's remembering, and I'm just going to echo something I said earlier. I do not have the time to waste on things that aren't working for me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So having the courage to, when a new path emerges, to consider taking it,
Yeah.
reframing old thinking and asking, is it true? And not acting like I've already got one foot in the grave. I'm not too old. I can do
Mm.
virtually anything I like at this age. And I know that not everyone is in that same position. And I'm grateful, very grateful for good health. But
Mm.
even if you're at home listening to us today and you're going, well, she looks pretty sunny and she lives in the Sunshine Coast, she's a lucky duck, and she can say all of this because she's well educated, or I didn't even finish high school, by the way, so let's take that one off the table. I'm well read, is probably what I am. Um, we all look good on paper and we
Mm.
all go through difficult times. And in those times, only you have the choice. Surrender to what is, and then look at your choices, see what emerges, take the action, make the change. And number one, what is going to make you joyful? Because that is contagious, and that is how you can best be of service to the people in your life and the people you come across. Smile at a total stranger. Occasionally you get a weird look back, but mostly joy is contagious. Even if people don't know what to do with it, they still feel it.
Yeah, I love it. That is our mic drop moment. Sheridan, thank you so much. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes to you so people can connect with you. And as always, to our listeners, please share this podcast with your friends, with anyone you think that needs more joy and remembering that they are enough. Really embracing self-acceptance. And please remember to follow and rate our show. And as always, remember that you are not too late. You are right on time. And your most exciting, joyful, accepting, magnificent chapter begins right now.